Hello and namaste. This is Aruna Ravikumar, senior journalist, anchor and author at Balaji Railroad Systems Private Limited, popularly known as BARSYL. I will be in conversation with the managing director of BARSYL, Sunil Shrivastava, and we will be discussing a wide range of issues about the company, its vision, expertise in the field, and several interesting topics related to the country and the world. Welcome to the first episode of MD Speaks. Hello Sunil.
Hi Aruna.
Firstly, congratulations. You've recently won a national award for your expertise related to the Pamban Railway Bridge.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about the award?
Yeah. Okay. This particular award is not just for engineering excellence. It is also very good for us because it's been given by our fraternity, which is the Consulting Engineers Association of India. So while over the years we've won many awards, this particular award is very special to us because it comes from within our industry. And we are very happy to be associated with such an iconic project globally.
Yes.
So that's something which definitely makes us very proud.
Yes. So in the decades that you've started now, your journey, can you talk about the beginnings? I think the beginnings were very humble. And today you're a known name in the field and you've won so many awards. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay. In flashback, or let's go back where it all began. I think first of all, I would like to dispel the myth which majority or most of them hold that I am the founder. No, I am not the founder. I joined the company much later. The founders were actually great visionaries, I would say, to have thought about this concept after being in service for working with the government and not even being in an entrepreneurial family. So I think all the founders were in that sense. They were basically three founders who had worked together at some point of time in the railways from different fields of specialization within the railway discipline. One was Mr. Arjun Pershad, who was from the railway, what is called as the traffic service, which runs the train operations. One was a civil engineer, my father, Mr. H.C. Shrivastava, who was a civil engineer in charge of, responsible for laying tracks and things like that. And the third gentleman was Mr. M.P. Shankar Naryanan, who was a mechanical engineer, but I would rate him as a total engineer because though he was a qualified mechanical engineer and one of the finest in the country, but he would have solutions for every engineering problem. So these were the three kind of stalwarts who set up the company.
As I understand it, all of them served a certain number of years in the railways before they started the company. So they must have started pretty late.
Yes, in fact, that is something remarkable. Which when I look back on that, for somebody to actually start a journey after 60 years of working in the railways or having a comfortable life and then getting into something which is unknown because none of them had ever seen business before, excepting for Mr. Shankar Naryanan. The other two had never got into anything to do with business. So I think, yes, that was definitely something amazing for them to even look at, for unknown waters they jumped into and had that vision. For which we could continue kind of today.
At an age when people are expected to retire and just relax,
absolutely,
and take things easy, they started a new venture.
Yes.
And how different were the founders?
Yeah, in fact, I think that has been one of the strengths of the organization, that each of the founder had a different kind of not just technical skill but also personality. There were three different personalities, I would say. While Mr. Arjun Pershad was very meticulous, so he brought in the processes into the business, now into using the management jargon today. He was a process-oriented man. Mr. Shrivastava was a doer and a visionary in that sense because he had the vision to set up this company and to offer this as a service. Mr. Shankar Naryanan was a pure systems quality and I would say engineering to a technical brain. And I think that is what made them all gel together. While they had worked together during their service in the railways for a couple of years they were together. But eventually I think this diversity is what brought them together. And they realized that collectively they can offer much better services by coming together rather than having individual options or individual services while they could have for only one particular area. So I think that is something which definitely.
So they were temperamentally different individuals, but they had a common vision.
Yes.
So how did they overcome any obstacles?
Okay. Yeah, in fact, temperamentally, like you rightly said, yes. In that sense, I would say Mr. Shankar Naryanan, the youngest of the three, was a little more adventurous because he actually quit the railways. He never retired from the railways.
Okay.
He quit the railways when he was so-called having a great career in front of him, but he wanted to be an entrepreneur and he set up India's first locomotive manufacturing unit in India. So he took that kind of jump or leap of faith, I would say, and set up that. And then after doing that, he realized that manufacturing was not his cup of tea. He was more a design man. So that's how he realized that, yes, consulting. So, he was a different kind of, he was such a versatile personality, I would say, because I've been lucky to have worked with all of them. So that's how I could narrate a lot of, benefit or sort of the traits which each of them had. He was a very versatile, person. One is he had traveled a lot, globally traveled, done a lot of work in Germany. So he also had that precision sense with him. So he would be precise in all his jobs to the extent of, measuring an A4 paper and seeing that, whether it was really A4 or not, because, that he was that kind of meticulous.
Not taking anything for granted.
Absolutely. And also getting into hands-on with any and everything. If required, he would go to the post office to post letters if there was nobody there. So that is something which, he was, Mr. Arjun Pershad was, I would say, very meticulous. Such meticulous that, especially with the written word, he would actually write a letter. Those days it was to be typed and posted, but he would not even give it to his secretary to type unless he had gone over it about twice or thrice. Sometimes you just leave the letter behind on his table. And, next day morning you would come and correct it and only then give that. Yeah. So he brought in that meticulousness.
That's a good practice. I think sometimes you don't notice mistakes and you look at it at a later period of time.
Absolutely. In fact, once I asked him, sir, why do you do this? So he said, no. The reason I start a letter is because I want to get out all my feelings into the letter. But at the same time, I also know that in that rashness, I could sometimes use, inappropriate language, which I don't want to. So that's why I always leave it behind. Next day morning, he says, invariably when I come back, there'll be at least 50% of the letter would be changed. Okay. And that is how, so that is something he brought in. He brought in that balance to the whole thing. And while my dad, yes, he was a doer. Being a civil engineer, he was always on the field. So he always had that action orientation with him. But he also had this vision in terms of he would come up with questions like, why can't we offer this service? Or why not? Why should we only confine ourselves? So in that sense, he was, I would say, more business oriented than the other two. The other two were the kind of stabilizing factor, but he would come up with things and question as to why we couldn't kind of do all these things. But having said this, I think none of them really knew how to do business, to be very frank. they didn't even know how to cost the services. And what I would call, them was as, it was like I jokingly used to tell them that what you're running is actually a coffee club, because they would come at about
Railway
11 o'clock.
Coffee.
Exactly, railway, just something to get away from home. So they would come at about 11:30 and go back by 3:34, because that was the only work, very little work they had when they started off. So that was something. So I always used to joke with them whenever I met them that, there's something which you do more out of meeting each other and, being away from home rather than actually doing it as a business. And I'm also sure.
So they would agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. Yeah, they also knew that, because they knew heart and heart that they were actually spending more money than they were making.
Okay.
They were lucky that they had a pension for them. So that was okay.
So they could take risks.
I don't think they looked at it as risk. They looked at it as passion, frankly. For them, it was a passion. Okay. Because I remember asking this to Mr. Arjun Pershad once. He said, Sunil, this is something which railways have given us, the stature and, the status which we enjoy today is thanks to the railways. And he says it is only our gratitude or, something which we've learned is what we need to give back. So if we store that knowledge with us, there's no point. So if the industry or the customers can use our knowledge, that is what. So I think it was more passion rather than anything else which, made them set up and also make it, survive.
So
and
how
things
did their work experience actually help them start something? There were not many companies like this when they started?
No. In fact, it's nice and funny actually. Each of them was, post-retirement, because all of them retired, rather both of them, my father and Mr. Arjun Pershad, retired almost within 7 or 8 months, I think. Yeah, my father was a year elder to Mr. Arjun Pershad, I think. So post-retirement, each of them was offered an advisory role with a big, one of the big groups. My father was an advisor to the Birla Group. Mr. Arjun Pershad was an advisor to the L&T group then. So they used to anyway interact, because Mr. Arjun Pershad, like I said, more was train operations, and my father was more on civil engineering. So whenever they had queries or, some clarification, they would interact with each other. And that's how they thought that, why are we doing this individually? Individually, one is, they also thought that it becomes more like a employer-employee relationship, which they didn't want to have. Whereas if we offer it as a corporate, that would be much better. And that is when they realized that a lot of times they would anyway approach Mr. Shankar Naryanan, who was a designer of locomotives, for their problem. So he says, why not rope him in also? And that is how they all came together. They chucked out their so-called individual advisory and told the clients that if you want to, we are forming a company, you'll have to give your business to this particular company, and we can offer you a much more bigger bouquet of service. At that point of time, they also got the fourth founder, and I think, again, it was, I would say, very, very adventurous for them. We actually set up an office in Madras then, or Chennai.
Okay. So already you had...
Exactly. So they already started off with 2 offices rather than 1 office. One, Mr. T.V. Srinivasan, who was also their colleague, he was from the railway commercial side. And that's how, and since, those days Chennai had certain potential clients and things like that, and he was based there. So they started off with this. So that is how these different personalities came together. And they did, all of them I know were more passionate rather than looking at money from the whole venture.
So it's interesting because you said they all experienced in the railways and they came out. When they started a private company, they are so used to the government kind of working. So how was the style of working initially?
Okay. Yeah, in fact, that again, what happened was Mr. Shankar Naryanan brought the private enterprise to them, since he had left the railways earlier.
Okay.
So a lot of times,
out of the system.
Out of the system. So in fact, he would actually comment a lot of times that, in the railway office, an officer does not know what happens outside their room. So they don't even know how much effort it takes to type out a letter or to send it by post. Whereas he says, I have run through all this. I've been a typist myself. I've been to a post office and done it. So So a lot of times he would actually literally not bother the others with that. You just tell them, give me the job, I'll do it.
So people going off track, he would put them
He would put them on track, or he would just ignore them. He said, don't worry, I'll get it done. You just tell me what is required, and I'll do it. So that is where he brought that so-called private sector thinking into them, I would say. And gradually the others started realizing, though still till I worked with them, there was not so much of private sector thinking in them. Because they're put in 30-35 years of government service.
Very difficult to change the mindset.
Exactly. So a lot of times, that would be a problem there. The decision making would be more oriented as a government service, rather than towards the customer. Those kind of issues were definitely there. So yes, that was a challenge for them. And see, one, like I said, they didn't know the cost, idea of costing. So that was another thing. They didn't even know how to cost their service, because they had no idea in terms of what is their time valued at, or what is. So they would actually, quite a lot of times, I heard them say that they would only work out the actual outflow expenses, and that's how they would think that would be their fees, not realizing that for their time there was nothing they had costed for.
They couldn't study competitors in the field.
There was no competitor then, and it was only the public sector rights. So they were always cheaper because that was a much bigger organization. Right. So there was nothing for them to worry about. They were just 4 of them, and they had one young girl as a typist, and they had appointed, I think, one ex-colleague of theirs as a junior kind of office manager. So it was, these 3 people and 2 support staff, working out of a, I think maybe 300 square foot office in Chennai Trade Center. They had only one table, and all 3 of them would sit on either side of the table. And sometimes, if they were not there, then the typist would use the same table to type their letters. So
very humble beginnings, as you put it.
Absolutely.
How did the growth story start? Their first projects? Can you recall one of the first projects?
I think again that was a bit of perseverance, a bit of luck. L&T, which was one of our big clients. Of course, Birlas were big. And Birlas were already into cement, into mining and other areas which require railway services. But L&T, I think, was one of the big things. One is they were proper corporate and not like the Birlas. They suddenly decided to get into cement manufacturing. So that, and being L&T, they wanted to go big. So that gave us a big boost, or rather the company a big boost, because L&T being corporate, they decided that no, we would actually have you as a retainer itself, not on a case-by-case basis, but we are willing to, kind of retain the company for their advice. And then, so that gave some stability to the commercial part of the organization. And I think that is where they also, the founders also realized that yes, they needed to kind of tie things together, be a little more organized. So, but then that helped them to give that continuity in business, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, or if I remember correctly, it was almost a 2-year or a 3-year contract which L&T had given them. And during that period, I think they looked at something like 5 or 6 plants to be set up. So they got that confidence, and that brought some kind of... so that initially was challenging, because they had to then organize support staff and everything. They took on people on part-time, because again, they didn't know the kind of hiring processes or where to get people from. So they took on retired colleagues of theirs to work on part-time basis.
But I think it was a good beginning because you have an established customer, a
Yes.
known company. So must
Yeah,
have been.
but then despite all that, I think they were still because their costing was haywire, I think they were still spending more money than what they were earning.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing some of their old accounts or balance sheets and things like that. I think their total business for the year, I remember, I think maybe sometime early 90s, was to the order of about 8 or 10 lakh rupees. So I'm sure they must have spent more on their petrol and their rent itself.
But they were pioneers in the field.
Yes, they were definitely, yes. Like I said, all of them had that vision because they were convinced that if as a group they are able to offer good service, they would definitely be takers. Though it was not an industry, in fact. At that point of time, railway consulting was not even an industry. But somehow they had that conviction with them that if they gave proper advice to the clients, the railways would also appreciate that because they would also be happy that, yes, the clients were coming to them with a knowledgeable partner or somebody who was able to guide them. And the customers, like the large groups, for them, because most of them were big users of railways since their commodity movement and things like that. So railway logistic cost used to be a major consideration. So if they were able to kind of, reduce that or optimize on that, so they also started seeing value in that kind of service. So I think, yes, that was something which like I said, their conviction is what I think converted the customers. I would put that way. Yeah. Since they were convinced, I think the customers started willingly giving them business as such.
So do you recall any interesting anecdotes concerning the founders,
yes.
Each one of them? Because you mentioned the individual traits.
Yes, they are, of course, they are, yes. Each of them, like I told you, each of them has a different kind of, attitude, different way of looking at work and things like that. So, yes, there are definite issues when three of them would be in disagreement, for example, since, like I said, since it was like, one-eyed man leading the blind man kind of thing, or maybe all three blind men trying to. So I remember, while I was not part of them, but one of the times when they were having this discussion about how do they cost their services kind of thing. So I think Mr. Shrivastava put some number there on the table on some working he did. But then Mr. Arjun Pershad said that, oh my God, why will somebody pay us so much? Because he said,
they themselves had doubts.
Exactly. So he said, oh my God, why will somebody pay us so much? So then, Mr. Shrivastava had that calculation that, okay, this much of time, since he had done some civil engineering work, so he was more adept at that. But he still could not convince Mr. Arjun Pershad that people would be happily willing to pay this much. That's when I remember Mr. Shankar Naryanan, kind of butted in, and he gave some formula which he used to do in manufacturing. He says, okay, if this is your actual cost, your profit should be this much. And when he worked out that, the number came to almost similar or closer to that number. And that is what convinced Mr. Arjun Pershad. And I believe, again, this is hearsay for me, I believe when this was offered to the client actually asked them that, are you sure? So when Mr. Arjun Pershad was discussing, he thought it was too high. So he didn't know what to answer. But then I believe the client themselves told, because they were very professional and these were very senior people. So I believe he told Mr. Pershad, I think you are underpricing yourself.
Wow, this is unusual.
Exactly.
The client telling you that.
Exactly. So he says, why don't you, relook at it? But then having given this number, Mr. Pershad said, okay, sir, fine. We'll work this out for 3 months or 6 months. If we have a problem, we'll come back to you. And rightly so. After, I think, about 4 months or so, they went back that this is the amount we're spending in a travel alone. We are not able to hire people. And the client willingly, I think, almost doubled the fees from there.
So you actually learn on the job.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, in fact, that is again another, I would say, very, very amazing stuff. Because they were willing to learn at that age.
Yes.
At 60, 62. They were willing to learn. In fact, they went to such a large extent that my father actually took up a class in computer program, or rather computer so-called certificate course, familiarizing, because he said, how can I, when I'm talking that people I employ should be working on computers, at least I should be able to do something myself. Wow. And he actually used to attend every day in the evening, 4 to 6 o'clock, he used to go for classes. For about a month he went for classes, and then he actually used to use his email. He was very active on Facebook. Oh. More than me. In fact, I never was on Facebook.
That's a very good example to set.
Never something which he shouldn't know kind of thing. And fortunately, Mr. Shankar Naryanan, being that, scientific oriented, he also prodded him. And again, Mr. Shankar Naryanan was a master, literally, I would say, in any form of engineering. He was a master in languages. In fact, he actually has translated certain Sanskrit books in English and Tamil. So out of pure hobby. So he was such a versatile person, and I think though he was a mechanical engineer by qualification, but if a civil engineering person went to him with a problem, he would come up with a solution for civil engineering, to such an extent that even some of our colleagues there, who had just maybe come out of engineering, you teach them even chemistry and physics also. So he was such a versatile kind of person. So, it was
very interesting, because the person who brings knowledge of maybe epics and language and literature also, and use it in business.
So in fact, he was also the unofficial pujari in the office.
Okay.
Because all pujas, this is what muhurtam. So anything new, he would work out the muhurtam, or he would conduct the puja himself. Because again, he was well versed in all the rituals. Yes, all the shlokas and everything. So he was also the unofficial pujari. No puja would ever be held, or no good event would ever start without consulting Mr. MPS. As long as he was known, because MP Shankar Naryanan was his name, so he was called as MPS. So everything would be decided by him. The good time, anything to happen, or even I think when they bought the first computer also, he decided what would be the time it would come into the office and things like that.
And he was also the mediator, like you said.
He was balancing factor, yes, and also person who was quite active. So he would run around also, he would travel a lot, because like I said, he was the youngest of the three, so he would unwillingly travel since he was used to also. So he would be out on the field. He would travel much more than these two people. Though yes, again I should admire that each of them was traveling till way beyond 65, 70. Those days there were not as many flights as we have today, or not as comfortable roads.
Not so simple.
But yes, they would go to sites even at 65 plus. They would still travel overnight, go around, train, whichever way. It was not that everywhere you had connectivity. But then yes, they would still go. So that is something which is literally remarkable, because this is something which youngsters should actually realize, that there's no age for doing something which you're passionate about.
It's an interesting observation. Actually, in BARSYL founders ensured that knowledge and continuous learning was a part of the vision of the company.
Yes. In fact, today, quite a lot of stuff which we carry forward now is because of that that vision of the founders. Yes. Because that is something which we feel is not very easy to kind of replicate. And that is, our responsibility to continue whatever vision they had, whether they are around or not. But I think that's important for us to continue, because they had a certain vision. And we are lucky that, yes, we are close to 40 years now, and out of which almost 10 or 12 years they've been around, or maybe a little more. So that becomes our responsibility, not now, even future generations who are there, that they should continue with that particular vision. Because not only did it differentiate us when they started the business, but I think today also that is one of our differentiating factors, that we lay great emphasis on knowledge, on this kind of, the camaraderie which we had within the organization. Yes, while employer-employee relationship is there, but we try to make it more friendly, more, not as cut and dry as a pure thoroughbred, professional organization. That is something which we think it's our responsibility to continue the legacy which they gave us, kind of thing.
No, their passion for work, their risk-taking ability, the fact that knowledge was the basis of the company. So that could actually create a ecosystem where there are ethics and, like you said, pricing also.
Yes.
They were thinking on the side of the client also.
True.
Will they pay so much?
Absolutely.
That's a question I don't think many people ask.
No. In fact, good you mentioned the word ethics. I again remember this discussion with Mr. Arjun Pershad, though I was not part of the organization then, but I used to meet them often. And sometimes one of the incidents, I saw him that he was quite agitated, which is very rare for him. He had come from some meeting and he was agitated. So I asked him, I said, sir, what happened? Why are you so agitated? So he says, no, I went to meet a potential client. And the way he spoke, the kind of dismissive attitude, or he was talking everything about money. So I just walked out. So I said, but sir, you're in business. He says, no. And that is something which, again, I always remember. He said, Sunil, we are in business, but not to make money. There are many, many ways to make money. He said, I can as well do some trading and make money. I could, with my contacts, I could just make deals and make money, and maybe big money. All I need to do is phone calls here and there. But he says, that's not what we are here for. We are here for giving something back to the society, back to the industry, incidentally make money. So he used a very nice term, which is, of course, journalists use it very often. He says, profit is good, but we don't want to be profiteering out of business.
Yes.
That is something which is very clear.
That's a rare quality.
Yes. So today also we follow that kind of policy, that yes, we need to make money, but not money at any cost, and not money by compromising ethics. Because I think as one of the key members in this organization, I feel my responsibility to ensure that whatever I have learned from them,
carry forward.
Yes, I have to carry forward, because some of the others have not even interacted with them. But me and some of my colleagues have been lucky that we have actually imbibed a lot of that, and it becomes our responsibility to ensure that yes, that tradition is not lost, because that is our DNA today. And I think in the industry we are known for that. People know us that yes, BARSYL is a very ethical
that credibility
company.
is very important.
For us, I think that is our most important thing. Business will come. Yes, there might be ups and downs, but we feel being ethical is sometimes difficult, but not impossible. So that is something which we would like to always kind of continue being there.
So this formed the basis of the company's vision or goal.
You could, yes. In fact, I would say these were the founding stones itself. Not just because normally vision becomes a very generic document or something. So this is, I would say, not this is an unwritten code, I would kind of think, like how we have, we talk of Gita and something as the basis. So similarly for us, ethics, interpersonal relationships, even so-called, sort of relationships within our industry with others, those are more important issues, not pure money. So client, in fact, a lot of times it happens that yes, we actually over-deliver because we feel that yes, that is what the client wants. Maybe we might have not built it into our cost, but that doesn't stop us from doing what is right. So that is our sheer, literally a foundation itself of our organization. Ethics is a very, very strong kind of requirement.
It's very heartwarming to hear these words, because when we associate with business, we we think of cold, ruthless practices, trying to outwit the other person. So having this social consciousness and work ethics and something for your employees and everyone to look up to.
True. In fact, a lot of time when people ask me, "Are you a businessman?" I said, "No, I'm not a businessman," because business is not what I do. I said, "Yes, I'm a consultant, but I'm not a businessman. I don't run a business house. I run a consulting company." And that's it. We give advice. Yes, for that we get paid. But I'm not in it, like, again, learning from the founders, we're not in it for making tons of money. We need to get paid for our efforts, what is reasonable, and we are happy kind of things with that. Similarly, yes, we have a lot of emphasis on, like I told you, relationship with clients. We have gone to the extent of actually telling our own employees that yes, if the client doesn't treat you properly, you are at liberty to just walk out. Because that is something that is something which we are very particular about. That we give respect and we expect respect. Because we don't want to be treated, like dirt, literally. Because we feel that yes, our knowledge is needed and that's why you're coming to you.
That gives a lot of freedom to the employees also when they're dealing with the clients.
That's something.
They're coming from a space where they are trusted.
Yes, absolutely. No, that is something which we, as management, we always support them. We give them that background. That yes, if something. Somebody is asking you to do something wrong, you can say no. And no questions asked on that. Nobody will ever question you that why you lost out on this business or something like that. That is something, yes, like I said, ethics and something is something we are very particular about. And we would like all our members in the organization to have that back of their mind always, that whatever I am doing, is it ethical? Is it beneficial to the customer? If it's helpful, then by all means, please go and do it.
Oh. So initially you said they didn't even know how to price the products. They learnt on the job. So at what point of time during the founder's lifetime did they see a growth, or did they see competition, suddenly many other companies coming up?
I think they were lucky that during their lifetime not much of competition came out during the initial growth phase. Correct. Only thing is they did not know how to look for business. So their problem was they knew there was business, but where to go, because they didn't know,
except the regular.
Exactly. So they didn't know what is marketing or how to do business development or how to even, kind of. So those days send out letters of, introduction or thing, because they've never done this all their life. So they didn't know. It was only word of mouth which came to them. Work came to them. So they were fortunate that, like I said, that time it was only the public sector rights which was there, which was way ahead of them. Being a public sector organization, very large, but also very pricey. So yes, so that they never faced intense competition because nobody closed kind of thing. And whatever little, but then the struggle was more for survival. Because like I said, there was no railway engineering consultancy industry itself. So a lot of times people didn't even know what to come to them for.
Correct.
What they could offer. There were no defined services. So every time these people had to keep on asking questions and come up with a service. There was nothing like a standard service available. So that was a bigger challenge for them, So while they had these regular customers, but then again they knew that their expenses are not going to be even. So they could be up and down or something. So I know a lot of times they would think that, how long can we continue like this? Maybe we'll have to stop because...
Oh, they had those doubts.
They had that because they didn't know how to expand because, like I said, marketing was zero. They didn't even know whom to write to. Those days we didn't have Google to do a search. Correct. Or there were no computers. So they didn't even know where to find the addresses.
It wasn't easy to access information.
Right? And they had no means to understand because it is only right because in their lifetime they had never done that. They never went soliciting for business or they never went even talking to a customer earlier. The customers came to them because in the railways and each of them was very senior officer there. So people used to wait to meet them. So
they had to actually change their entire mindset and personality.
Which I find is very remarkable. Again, see, one of the reasons why I have great admiration for especially Mr. Arjun Pershad, he's been a great teacher for me. So one thing he always would say is that, because I remember I asked him that why don't you write your designation which you retired as in your visiting card. He says, no, the day I left that chair, that is over. Today if people need to give me business, they need to give me business as Mr. Arjun Pershad. He is capable and not because that seat was capable. So he says, I will never put my designation there. So because though he was a general manager, so I told him, he said, no, today they have to respect me for what I am as an individual. And that is what, and my capability does not go away or be there because of the designation. My capability.
He was a wise person who didn't carry any baggage from the past.
Absolutely, and literally he would never carry any baggage. he never carried huge files or whatever. No,
okay.
He would just carry one small folder or something. Yeah. He had those small pocket books which he would keep in his pocket there and make his notes. So he never carried literally no baggage for him.
Yeah. So everything about him reflected his
absolutely. His demeanor itself was highly intellectual. You could when you interacted with him, very soft spoken. Also very, kind of measured in speaking, but highly knowledgeable. So when you spoke to him, you could actually, half an hour session, you could pick up so much from him that, even a teacher would not be able to kind of directly teach you that. So that was, whereas Mr. Shankar Naryanan was the other extreme, he was an extremely good teacher.
Okay.
If you went to him with a question, he would not just give you the answer, he would teach you the fundamentals of that. So next time, you had no doubt at all. So he was a proper teacher. Mr. Shankar Naryanan would teach you even simple things like grammar or whatever. So he would teach you how to use grammar in a proper way or how to type a letter.
So communication also was taught.
Fortunately, all three of them were good communicators. Okay. That was another good
Including
thing.
Your father.
Yes, all three of them were good communicators. Yes, but then like I said, each had a different style of communicating. My father's communication would be very to the point. Mr. Arjun Pershad would be very measured, and Mr. Shankar Naryanan would be very detailed, typical engineering description kind of thing. So he would give so each of them had that, different ability to communicate. So collectively, yes, a lot of times I've seen that they would exchange draft of letters between each other to make sure that they were writing this thing. So Mr. Arjun Pershad would write, pass it on to my father, say, have a look at it, or pass it on to Mr. Shankar Naryanan MPS, please see, and if you can modify or something. So that another thing was a very humble thing. For example, Mr. Arjun Pershad was actually Mr. Shankar Naryanan and my father's boss during service. But
God.
For certain period of time, they were actually, reporting to him. Yeah. But despite that, they had
after he came out of service, they never had
no airs at all, and they were like equals there. There was nothing which, they stopped from each other, disagreements, agreements, whatever, they would have fight it out and they would then resolve it. So they had literally left their baggage. I think the day they left government service, they forgot that what their designations are and they joined together purely on individuals' kind of strengths and capabilities. So that is something which is very, very, very difficult for somebody in that position to come up to. And that is some learning which anybody can do that. No egos, no baggage, nothing. When you start as equals and you respect each other. Despite the differences, you respect each other.
That's very nice. Very nice beginning and very heartwarming story. And I think there are lots for people to learn of this generation and how, you can look back and learn from their experiences.
Yeah, in fact, the reason why I wanted to have this session also is that a lot of these things are unwritten.
Yes.
You can't describe, you can't write them. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity for the people in our organization, not now even coming forward, to know what we stand for.
Yeah.
Because like I said, these will always continue to be our
No, it's not just
foundation.
your organization. I think anybody in the business who's doing this kind of work, they would be inspired to know the kind of principles and experience and how they worked around doing something that was unheard of.
True.
And after retirement,
True.
post-retirement.
Yeah,
it's okay
second
when
career.
you start young and go ahead. So
True.
then it shows that, people, there is no age
Yes.
no age limit to start something new and fresh. It just requires proper thinking and
I think more
passion
than,
for work.
I think passion is the right word. I wanted to use that. I think it is passion which is more the need of the hour. Once you are passionate about something, I think then age, physical disability, discomfort doesn't matter.
Like
I
obstacle.
think.
There are no
because
obstacles.
this is what they proved. They proved that once you're passionate, then you forget everything else. And like you rightly said, even after having a cushy life, they started from scratch. Where they had to do all their, like I said, sharing one table where they had earlier they had individual rooms where 500 square feet each, but now three of them sharing 250 square feet of office. But then so I think it's passion which drove them to do that. And that is
and
something
not bothering about the past designations, working on a level playing field.
Absolutely. That is really amazing. They literally wiped out the whole past, which is very, very difficult. I'm sure, not many people would be able to do that, but they just wiped out their past totally, and absolutely no ego. Even to go to meet their subordinates, earlier subordinates, they would still seek appointments to go and meet them and not barge into the offices for them, where normally that is the trend. But those things is great. In a sense, anybody should learn those kind of humbleness from them, I would say.
So we got to know many interesting facets of founders and many interesting lessons for your employees, for everybody watching this meet. And I want to know at what point you joined. I think that's for the next episode. And when you joined, how did things change? So we'll have to wait for the next session.
We'll do that in the next session. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation in the first episode of MD Speaks. We'll see you on the second episode soon.